So there's a lot of speculation going on right now, watching Bob McLellan. And I figured, you know what? I'll make a list of 6. 6 coaches that may be on the hot seat right this moment as we go into Thanksgiving. And I picked six teams that are out of the playoffs. What's the level of frustration? First off, Arizona. Todd was just hired. Arizona's got 3 wins in a row. For right now, I'll say Todd is safe. For right now. Todd may be one of those coaches that gets a season and then gets replaced by somebody else. But for right now, Arizona, they weren't expected to be a contender. They were expected to be better than this. But 3 wins in a row, I'll say, sure. Todd's relatively safe. And I'm doing this, I know I did this not long ago, but this has changed, in my opinion. Buffalo. Phil Housley has enough popularity in the city of Buffalo, and there's enough frustration to go around in terms of the product on the ice. I think that because the GM and the coach were just hired over the offseason and brought in under difficult circumstances, they will have a long leash. So I'm not worried about Housley, and if you're worried about Botterill, you shouldn't be, because this is still the mess left behind by the previous coaches and GM. The interesting part is when Bilesma was gone, the idea was that Buffalo would get a lot better. Arguably, they've got worse. So players didn't want to play for Bilesma. Apparently, Bilesma wasn't the problem in Buffalo. But we'll see. Edmonton. So this is the topic of conversation today with some, and I agree. How long does Edmonton fall short like this? How long does Todd McLellan come out publicly and criticize his team before he's the one that finds himself on the hot seat? Now, last season, when Edmonton went through some rough patches here and there, he would stand out and say, it's unacceptable. The effort is unacceptable right now from my team. I'm not happy. But he's continued to go out publicly, and Don Cherry said it, and other sources have said it as well, that when you publicly criticize your team, you're publicly criticizing your players, you're playing a dangerous game. You're playing a very dangerous game, actually. Because you're saying, well, I know better, which is fine as the coach. That's okay to say you know better. But to publicly say, I know better than that guy who isn't playing, and that guy didn't show up this game, and boy, am I ever tired of that. Like, because players know what's being said about them publicly. You're better off to keep a lot of that in the locker room than to bring it out and just put it out for public consumption. The Edmonton Oilers are right now, they and the Canadiens are probably the most disappointing teams to start the season. And Buffalo's in that conversation. I think Florida's in that conversation. We'll get to them later. Soon, actually. But Edmonton's got a special place in that they were supposed to be on the verge of ending this long streak of cuplessness. And Edmonton was supposed to be on the verge of this great thing with Connor McDavid. He's the best player in the league, and he's this generational talent. And McDavid's still putting up the points. McDavid's still performing. But the team around him has crumbled. The defense has crumbled again. And then word came out today that the Oilers are looking for help on defense, which caused me to facepalm when I read it. Are you serious? Really? Now, they missed Sekera. And I've said that before. The Oilers missed Sekera. And I want to see when Sekera's back in the lineup how that's going to affect the rest of the defense. The problem is, by the time Sekera's back, they can't see the playoffs with the telescope. And McLellan deserves some blame in this. Absolutely. And Chiarelli deserves plenty of blame in this. Absolutely. There's lots of blame to go around. But I think there's a lineup in that locker room that's good enough to contend for and make the playoffs. Which says the coach is likely on the hot seat. So, in terms of which coaches could be the first ones to go, I really think it'll be one of the 6 on this list. And it's a talented list. Make no doubt about it. Either very talented as players or very talented as coaches, or both. And you guys can decide which ones are good at which parts of the career scale. So I honestly think McLellan's in trouble in Edmonton. Now, Florida, Bob Boughner, he just started. Florida wasn't expected to contend. They're still rebuilding from their good season, which Edmonton's kind of in that same position. You think about it? You really think about it? Colorado had that good season, fell back. Calgary had a good season, fell back. Florida had that good season. Like, it's not unusual to see a team have one really good season and then kind of take their place back at the bottom. And Edmonton's trying desperately not to be a part of that. But you've already made deals. Who are you trading for? What are you picking up? What are you giving up? And they said on I think it was Bob McLellan said, well, they've got Puljujarvi. Yeah, I don't know what the market is on Puljujarvi, and after seeing what Eberle and Hall have done, does Chiarelli really want to trade out another young forward? Does he really want to trade out another young, talented forward for a potential top 6 defenseman? Does he want to do that? Because I wouldn't if I was Chiarelli. I'd be like, no, I've already a couple come back to haunt me. And again, Larson had a very good season last year. He just hasn't been great this year. We'll put it that way. Okay. And Eberle's been fantastic in for the Islanders, better than Strome's been for the Oilers, and Hall's playing great for New Jersey. So, and it all comes back to Edmonton, doesn't it? Yeah. So Montreal, Julien, I don't know. See, and I meant to do that in green, but I didn't in blue. But hopefully you guys still understand what a check mark, what a question mark is, rather than the check mark. I don't see. Julien interests me and McLellan interests me as potentials because Julien, does he work with the Montreal roster as it currently is? Does his style of coaching match the team that he's got on the ice? And is Marc Bergevin able to create a team that will work with Claude Julien's coaching style, or is it just a bad match? And it's a question I've been asking since the start of the year. And I still don't have an answer. And I don't know, with Montreal being as demanding as they are, and Montreal media and fans are not a whole lot less demanding than Toronto, I can't see Julien being there much longer. Only because if they continue on this road down to the bottom, Bergevin's going to be out, and the first thing a new GM's going to do is clean house. And then Julien, whether he deserves it or not, likely finds himself out of a job. And then we get into the whole who would take over in Montreal. Good luck finding a GM. I don't know very many people who would want the job as a general manager in Montreal. It's kind of like that general manager job in Toronto. It's kind of like, I don't know. Am I going to be allowed to actually run the team, or are the fans going to run the team? And am I going to be pressured? In Montreal, you have the case of, am I going to be pressured to bring in French players rather than the best possible players? That's happened before, where you see a trade get made and you go, what was that trade made for? And it's because they got a French player back for a European they traded out. Or they signed a free agent because the player's from Quebec. So they feel that increases the ability of the public to accept the team that you're putting out on the ice. And, it's kind of silly. I understand it, though. I mean, as a Canucks fan, I always am happy to see a BC boy in the lineup. I always think that they play a little harder, and I can understand that part of it. But sometimes in Montreal, they go overboard with that. Lately, not so much. Maybe Saku Koivu had a massive effect on Montreal fans where they realized, hey, he's not from Quebec, but he's a damn good player. Either way, Julien and McLellan are the ones that, for me, are the most likely to go first after this guy. Hakstol in Philly. Philly is not ready to win. Philly's not ready to win because they have a great young blue line, but it's young. Very young. And an inexperienced blue line will often get savaged by the Barracuda that are NHL players. And Hakstol could very well be the one that goes down first. So for me, if I had to put an alarm here and an exclamation point, Philly's probably the most likely to switch out coaches first. I think Hakstol could be the first one to go. I don't think any coaches are getting fired before Christmas, but as soon as tomorrow, there's certain coaches that are on notice. And I think McLellan, Julien, and Hakstol, considering where the teams are, as opposed to where the teams were supposed to be, you can argue Florida, Buffalo, Arizona weren't expected to make the playoffs anyways, for various reasons. But Edmonton, Montreal, and Philly, Edmonton and Montreal were absolutely expected to be in the playoffs, and Philly was expected to be better than they've been. And we can talk about how they've been very unlucky, and I've said it many times over. But in the end, it's your coach that will take the fall first. They can't trade players out in Philly. Now, personally, I don't think it would be a bad idea to take one of the young, solid defensemen they've got and trade him out for help somewhere else. I just don't know which part you're fixing. Forward depth? Are you trying again to fix goaltending? Because every year I hear about how Philly's goaltenders suck. Every single year. And yet, no matter who goes in there, it's the same story. It doesn't matter who's in net for Philly. And playing behind an inexperienced blue line will do that. It'll make a goaltender look bad. So the answer? Just get rid of the coach. And here's the problem. Last year, St. Louis changed their coach. They got a hell of a lot better. New York Islanders changed their coach. They got a hell of a lot better. Boston changed their coach. Got a hell of a lot better. Boston made the playoffs. St. Louis made the playoffs. New York Islanders were this close to making the playoffs. And the only one that didn't work was Florida because they replaced Gerard Gallant, a very popular coach, with Tom Rowe, a very unpopular man in the Florida locker room, clearly because they loved Gallant. So when you look at that record from last year and you say these teams were able to turn things around and get back to where they were supposed to be, those three coaches are under a lot of pressure. Let me know your picks in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And it'll be interesting to see which of these coaches is most likely to be the one on his way out the door. If anybody I don't have up here, I don't see them as being under pressure to potentially get fired. But if you have a differing opinion, by all means, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.